憧れを今掴んだ大歓声の鉛に心地よく打たれたならさあ飛び込もう明日から生まれ変わるとか誰かが見切りつけたとかこの街のスタイルとかそんなもんに流され続けて角の取れた原石にはきっと誰も酔わない不思議と扉の向こうには VIP 名乗るやつはなく誰もが苦悩の果てさ俺も憧れを今掴んだ身を委ねればいい舵をこの手に3つ数えて The Showtime 大歓声の鉛に心地よく打たれたならさあ飛び込もう
So here's what I want to know, and we've discussed this
At length already.
at length, but if you can give it to me concisely with hard
luck.
evidence.
Concise, me?
Okay, if you can give it to me with hard evidence.
Hard evidence? This is an opinion.
It can be
I'm not laying
opinionated,
down a
but
fact.
back it up.
Oh,
Back it up with something.
I'm gonna back it up.
And the question is, as you mentioned before,
Yes.
is Avatar: The Last Airbender, or any of its related content, such as Korra or the comic books, are they considered anime/manga?
I think, from what I understand, manga is not only a distinctly Japanese art form, it's one that's been around for like hundreds of years. And it's had an incredibly like long and rich history that's sort of like, I don't know how exactly it's been tested, but like any art form, it's been tested and it's survived those tests and it's become what it is because of that. And it's sort of recently like evolved into like the modern era of itself, right? It only started to breach sort of our cultural bubble here in America, like in, I want to say like the 80s, when like mainstream like anime started to be like Americanized and televised, right?
Sure.
It's like when like the Dragon Ball came out and
That's-
all that kind of stuff.
That's the most
right?
popular era. Although I would say the first couple of animes to ever infiltrate America were Gigantor, the space age
Okay.
robot, which is a black
yeah.
and white only anime. Then there was Astro Boy and Speed Racer. Those are like the big three.
Speed Racer is Japanese, I forgot about that. So,
And then it developed
Yeah.
from there, because then Dragon Ball came out before Dragon Ball Z.
true. I want to say, so in the last, so what is that, 50 years?
It's been a while.
From like our perspective, but as like art forms go, that's at least compared to like the lifetime of this art form, that's extremely young, right? If you think about the comparison, but again, I'm not saying that this is a prerequisite for it to be anime.
No.
necessarily.
That's not even what I was going to say. Think about the fact that anime is limited to the technological advances of cinema.
Sure.
So cinema only started in like the late 1800s with silent films, and then it was like produced a lot by like Thomas Edison and technology that he advanced, and then after that it started to take off. So to have an animated film, it was pretty advanced back then, to be honest with you. Even the
No, absolutely.
50s, 60s, like in Japan, they were coming out with this before it even hit America, and it was pretty advanced.
It certainly was advanced. I don't argue with that at all. My thing is that anime has sort of developed into what it is. Anime is a very recent thing, but anime started in Japan, and it started out of, it was like it was bringing to the animated screen an art form that had existed for hundreds of years in its traditional form. And if you look at and here's where I'm going to argue my opinion here. You look at the best and most successful anime, not in like mainstream, but in like when you look like anime aficionados, which I am not one. But when you look at like people who like really know their stuff, right?
Let me just ask you, what do you consider the best, even if you're not an expert?
I look at storytelling. So to me, the ones I've experienced, like, listen, I love Dragon Ball and like the progression, the characters. There's a lot of like really great stuff, but I don't
think the storytelling is great in Dragon Ball.
Yeah, like the character development episode by episode. The dialogue is horrendous. The dialogue almost killed that show for me so many times. Not because I can't stand bad dialogue, but because it is so terrible.
Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and I would even say Dragon Ball Super,
in some places Super, less so.
But they're all things that you should really just watch, like the recaps on YouTube.
I can't do that.
Only
That's
because
too much summary.
there's a lot of, I don't want to call it filler, but it's just too slow moving. The Frieza fight,
slow moving.
the Frieza fight is like from Dragon Ball Z.
60 episodes long or something.
It's, I think, 15 episodes of just holding a spirit bomb in the air and talking about...
That doesn't even... Is it 15 episodes of that?
15.
15?
Straight episodes. It's the longest fight in anime history. Single fight. And it's just Goku building up energy above his head while he talks to Frieza about how he's going to kick his ass.
And then that doesn't even finish the job.
Right, it doesn't even finish the job.
No, not even close, actually.
If you watch they have a video on YouTube where they take all the fight scenes from that whole arc, just Goku versus Frieza, and they condense it into the actual...
Just the fighting?
No. Think about this. They speed it up into the actual time they claim it took to fight Frieza in the show.
Oh, interesting.
So if it was a 10-minute fight, they take all 15 episodes, cut them up, and speed them up until it fits into 15 minutes. And then you get to watch it lightning fast.
In the show, they say it took 15 minutes for that whole fight?
There's some sort of time stamp.
Like the Super Saiyan part, or the whole thing?
You'd have to watch it.
Back to my concise explanation of this. The best anime that I have seen, I'll simplify it down to that, because that's more accurate, are what I would consider like sort of like a pseudo golden age of anime as I've experienced it. The stuff like the early 2000s, the Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, Death Note, stuff like that. Like super manga accurate.
You're coming from a storytelling perspective.
From a storytelling perspective, that's what I look at. And I look at other things like animation style and voice acting and stuff like that. That's what I see. And what I sort of get is, from my experience of anime, which is very limited. I only started watching anime actually probably 4 years ago, if that. My first anime was actually JoJo, which is...
I've never watched it, but I heard
bizarre.
Good things about it.
Oh my gosh. That was not intentional. It's really odd to me that it was my first anime, because like, usually I like things that are very serious, very immersive, very, like, we put thought into this. We didn't just like, oh, this would be funny. But... I do enjoy it. I don't like it as much as some of the more serious anime. My perspective is that the closer to the original like manga art form, and this could be like a style thing. Like maybe certain manga styles appeal to me, and so I think, oh, this is better because it's like, and I imagine that's like more traditional like manga style, and it's truer to that, so it's better. And it could just be that like Dragon Ball is like just as traditional, give or take, even though it kind of goes through... I suspect a lot of the English dialogue issues are because it's translated into English and not given much care into kind of like catching it up to speed language-wise.
Sure,
it's
some things just don't translate.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think it's that poorly translated, but I know that they redid the translation in Dragon Ball Z. They actually came out with, I don't want to call them HD, but they redid the English translation, the English dub.
Yeah.
And released it in a sort of like enhanced box set at one point.
Mm-hmm. I
actually was at Comic-Con, like, I want to say it was 2012 or 13 in New York, and I sat on a panel with the voice actor of Vegeta and a few other voice actors.
That's so cool, bro. He's one of my favorite voice actors. Yeah. That guy's a legend.
So I was young where I wasn't like as big of a fan of Dragon Ball back then, but I knew what it was. Like I grew up watching it on Toonami. Mm-hmm. But they were promoting the new box set with the enhanced voice acting and everything, and they literally redid the whole thing. Like, they sat and redubbed it.
That sounds like so much fun. Like, I would love to just sit. Imagine, like, as part of a podcast, like, we took a show and got together with, like, a bunch of our friends, and, like, we, like, dubbed over a show that we liked. And, like, we each did a character or multiple characters or something like that. Wouldn't that be so much fun? I'm into acting. I used to act. I've never done voice acting, but...
Let me just say this. I don't want to cut you off, but this is an idea that I've had
Okay.
And I'm actually in the process of planning something similar. Cool. Not exactly what you're describing, but I've had voice acting and animation on my mind for a little while, and something
you're
original.
Trying to write a show.
I'm not gonna. I wouldn't be so ambitious, but if I were to do something, I would start off small with like
a 15-minute pilot.
Something
okay, I
like
see where
that.
you're going.
Like a 15-minute pilot.
We're coming full circle here.
It's a little bit of a ways off, but I've been talking to friends and very talented collaborators that you and I both know, and some that you may not know. But long story short, people are interested between the animation and the voice acting and the whole idea.
I would also be interested enough to hear your pitch and see if I'd be interested in participating in that. It's a really cool idea, regardless. And if you wanted help writing it or just bouncing ideas off of people, I am a semi-professional idea developer. Actually,
you should get that on a t-shirt.
Semi-professional idea.
Semi-professional idea developer.
My title is a manuscript coach, but I actually that's a lie. I do have two. I have at least one committed, not contract, but I'm working on a project that's heading to publishing, and I am the editor / idea developer.
Okay.
Manuscript coach for this idea. And
am I allowed to say what the idea is?
You're allowed to say whatever you want. It's your podcast, dude.
I don't know what you are willing to reveal about your own projects, but
it's not my project, so I'm not going to reveal it here because I haven't talked to the author about it. But he and I have talked about it and worked on it, and we're working together, so I can say I'm a professional manuscript coach.
So this has nothing to do with the newsletter project you're working on?
The magazine?
The magazine.
Oh, no. The magazine's different. That's different. I'm the head editor of the magazine, but I'm talking about this person's writing a book, and we meet periodically, and I help them walk through their ideas, analyze what they've written, and continue to develop that book toward completion.
Sure. So what an editor does.
Basically, but it's a lot less proofreading and syntax. It's a lot more sitting down and figuring out what you want the story to be. It's much more consultant editing. I do the nitty-gritty editing, but I don't describing myself as an editor, because when I say that, both writers and people I'm just explaining this to hear that and they're like, oh, so you correct grammar. Yes, but that's 2% of what I do. Mm-hmm. The whole rest of it is what are we doing here? What is this story about? How do we get it from these set of ideas to this published book? You know, so it's so much more fun than you gotta cross a T here, right. No. But you gave me an idea with this, and I think I'm gonna cut down my answer, my conciseness into this. I feel for any art form to be sort of thing, and this is what I learned in school and sort of hold closely, is that for an art form to develop, it needs to be done enough and developed enough that it can sort of start to act in some capacity, in some literary capacity. It doesn't have to look like literature or have the vibe of literature, but what literature, and it's funny because memes are doing this today. Memes are becoming the next form of literature in our society today, and I'll explain that in a second here.
I understand what you mean.
Literature functionally is literature because it's media that is is in intellectual and discourseable conversation with itself. It's sort of bouncing off itself and developing ideas as a disconnected but yet very connected thing. And as you weigh literature in the canon today, often what you'll find is the weightier something is, the more it's conversing with stuff of its kind. Avatar does a very good job of this. It has a lot of tropes of anime. The issue I have with American anime and calling it anime is let's try to name as many shows we could consider anime in America today, right? We said Teen Titans, we got Avatar. I can't think of any more on the top of my head. I bet we can name 10 or 12, right? Probably.
Amazon has a superhero show called Invincible.
Okay.
It has a lot of anime-esque
I've seen
elements.
Enough to definitely agree that has aspects of it. So we got 3 here.
There's American Dragon Jake Long from Disney Channel. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It was a young Asian American kid who turns into a dragon.
Yeah, I vaguely.
I'll put it up on the screen, but
Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's say 4.
So wait, I got the Jackie Chan Adventures, which I mentioned.
Okay.
I don't know who produced that, but I'm pretty sure because it was released on Disney,
Okay,
an
but
American
let's
production.
back up here. Anime, traditionally, for me, a prerequisite for anime is that it came from a manga or some graphic art, right?
You're adding stipulations to this.
I feel like that is what anime functionally is. The anime that are like original series, I consider them like a kind of anime, like sort of anime, but not really. Like traditionally, that's like what anime, how it started and like what it sort of functionally was. And like animated shows, there's no like stipulation for that. Like it's animated and it's a show. It can be what it is. But for it to be like, as we look at anime as a cultural art form, I consider it an art form, and I sort of hold that in not like a higher regard, but just it just has its own thing. That is an animated form of, like, we got these books here, right? These graphic novels, right? So
Well, these are actually novelizations.
they're novelizations. Okay,
Yeah.
I know that there are some Avatar like comics.
There are.
Which is why I'm bringing that up. I guess
Most of the Avatar
these,
comics
but-
are sequels to the show. These are, shout out to these prequel books. These are novelizations of previous Avatars before Aang.
Yeah. So that's Yang Chen over there. Who's this over here? This is Kyoshi.
Kyoshi. And that's one of 2 Kyoshi books. I don't have the other one.
I'm so curious about Yang Chen because when Netflix, like when Avatar came to Netflix, everyone was like, "Oh, Kyoshi this, Kyoshi that, Kyoshi this," and there was that's such a like culturally inspiring and relevant like female character, and like rightfully so. I don't have a problem with that. But
Right, because she's a badass.
no one said anything about Yang Chen, and as a fellow Avatar, also from the Air Nomads, thank you.
Yeah.
That like Aang spoke with some. That I think
She was the one.
Korra also spoke with some, but we never really got to get to know, and no one spoke about her. Like, I'm just so curious about what's in that book and what the
Well,
writers
you're
have
welcome to
created.
borrow it.
I have things that I should be reading, but I will let you know, and I
That's
may
fine.
take you up on that because that would be really, really cool.
That's fine.
But yeah, I find that for me to say, oh yeah, Avatar is an anime, or Teen Titans is an anime, or Johnny Test is an anime, like it has.
That's a stretch.
I'm joking.
Okay.
I'm not being serious about that. I'm just throwing, because I can't think of any good examples right now off the top of my head.
You want me to keep going? Because I gotta feel like I rattle off.
You can maybe you can kind of bring them back with your, because I sense you're gonna rebut me here.
I'm gonna rebut you.
For
Not
me,
for the reasons you're thinking.
It comes down to, like, is it made after like a comic series that is not just like comics, but it's like manga style and relevant? Is it in conversation with its Japanese roots, and is it in conversation with itself? And I don't think there are enough of them in America yet for it to really materialize into its own, what I would consider anime. Because I consider anime distinctly Japanese. And so that's how I learned it, that's how I was introduced to it, and that's sort of what I hold it is. I have nothing against Avatar. I like Avatar no less. I just, for me, and how I do the categories, that's how the categories work. So that's what I see. If you call Avatar an anime, I have no problem with that. Like, you can say what, you can divide the categories up how you want to, but those are my categories, and that's why. So what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I think we need to, as a society, decide what level of cultural appropriation is acceptable. And
good luck with that.
this is...
We're never going to
Yeah,
decide
I know.
that. No one's ever going to agree to that.
But this is my point.
Okay.
The point I'm making is that I truly believe that anime and manga are art styles. And if you are able to replicate those art styles, you are creating that form of artwork. So, in my opinion, if you are a chef and you are making French cuisine, but you were born on Long Island, like, are you not making French food because you're not French?
I'm not saying the author has to be Japanese, but I hear what you're saying.
But you know what I mean? Like,
see what you're
because the
saying,
producers of this show were American,
Yeah.
and they are emulating a Japanese style.
They are.
Although I hear what you're saying about the source material, in the sense where, do you have to be Japanese in background and heritage to illustrate a manga? I don't know. I don't think so, because based on my point, I don't
but I
think so.
think you have to, like, I can't watch an anime, like a single anime, and then go write manga. I can't do that. And the reason I can't do that is it's not for like a cultural appropriation reason. I think like we have to be careful with that kind of stuff, and like I'm not saying we should be like, oh, it doesn't matter, it's fine. That's not like, that's too far. But the reason I can't do that is because manga like it is a style, there's a style to it, and I think it's really interesting that you described it that way as opposed to a form. Because like in literature, a style is like the way something feels, the way it's presented, the kinds of things you put in it. Sure. A form, like a poetry form, like quatrains, have specific rules. And if you don't fit those specific rules, you're stylistically emulating it, but you're not writing in that form.
Okay, so
I consider like manga a form. And so to write manga, I would have to study a bunch of manga and get familiar with like what the rules of that form are, however nebulous they may be, and then emulate that within a certain, at least with a certain intentionality.
So we're coming at this. I don't
know if the writers of Avatar were like, we want to make an anime. They were like, we want to make an animated show, and they were inspired by a lot of anime. Again, like the amount of research and depth they put into it. I mean, the 4 bending styles are based on 4 different forms of martial arts. It's so cool and so deep, and they put so much love and passion into this. Like, well done to the max. Like, I couldn't praise this show more. I don't feel confident. I haven't done the research, I guess. It's possible they were like, we want to sort of take what anime has and make our own of this. But it seems to me they kind of just worked with what they had and what inspired them and just kind of went forward and sort of made their thing. And so for me, stylistically, absolutely an anime. But form-wise, that's sort of like a different distinction that I wouldn't extend to that. That makes sense? Somewhat?
I'm going to...
You don't have to agree. You don't have to agree. I'm just asking because I might not be making sense at all.
You used words in sentences that were coherent. So in that sense, it made sense.
So everyone's tracking. We're all in the same heart. But no, what are your thoughts?
You made a good logical argument. And I don't disagree with you. But you brought up the idea of poetry. And I've used this example with you before. If you write a limerick and you meet all the criteria of a limerick, but you're not Irish, is it a limerick?
Sure.
So what are the criteria you need to meet to make an anime without being Japanese?
So here's my thing. My best guess is that the intention and the familiarization that these writers writing Avatar and like writing Teen Titans, right? And writing like the Jackie Chan show you were talking about.
Sure.
Probably didn't go to manga or even anime directly and be like, hey, we want to make one of these. Like when I go to write a song, I think of all the songs and all the pieces of songs and things that can go into songs that I can find. When I go to write a book, or a novel, I think, okay, like, how do you start a novel? You know, I didn't think, well, how do you start a screenplay? And then maybe it turns into a novel, or it reads like a novel, or it's long enough it could be a novel, and no one wants to watch my screenplay, or deal with the screenplay. But, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, when you go to write something, you intend to write that thing, and you study up on, or you at least think about the parts of what makes that thing that thing. And I feel like the similarities are definitely there, but I think the differences and the similarities aren't consistent enough to where I feel confident that like that sort of intentionality of creation and I guess trueness to like the source material was really done with these American shows that people will often say, well, they're like an anime in and of themselves. And I think that as Americans, we're kind of quick to do that with stuff, which isn't necessarily bad. And I don't think that like there's a monopoly on like, certainly not of like cultural descent or anything like that. I think it comes down to like, did you intend to make an anime, and did you really meet the criteria? Because you know, again, an anime might not be a form. Like people might authoritative people might come out and say, oh, it's not a form. But I've heard a lot of people saying, you know, it is its own form and it's got its own like thing, and you kind of have to like be serious about being part of that thing if you want to be. And so I don't know. It's is it nebulous? Yeah. Is this not really defensible as an argument? Yeah. Like this is my perspective, my opinion. This is why I divide the categories this way. But I think it's.
But you haven't answered the question.
What's the question specifically then?
What are the criteria, in your opinion, that would fulfill the idea of anime as a form?
I think again, if you want me to like lay out specific steps, I don't have them for you. I'm not familiar enough with...
Could you give me 3?
Can I give you 3 specific
of your
things?
own personal opinion criteria.
Well, we've already said one is the original form of this thing is a manga or a
So it has to be a manga before it
It
becomes
has to be
anime.
manga based.
Okay.
That's the first thing. The second thing is I want to say you have to set out to make an anime. Like the intentionality has to be there. If you're just trying to make a show that is animated and is fun and magical and whatever, like I don't really feel like, again, stylistically that's enough. If we're fitting into the form of anime, that's not enough in my opinion. The third thing I'd have to pick after that is I think you'd really have to be familiar with and using a wide amount and depth of the tropes of anime. And I agree that Avatar meets a lot of them, but I don't think it meets as many of them as I would feel safe to say that it is one. And I'll add a fourth one. Again, we don't have enough American anime to have them really be in conversation with themselves and like referring to each other, not necessarily specifically just in tropes and in that literary conversation. So we're going to fit into the form of an anime, a literary form. It's got to have its own literariness to it. And I just don't think there's enough American anime content for it to fill that like fourth criterion.
But what if the American anime has that internal conversation with the Japanese anime? Does that almost make it more valid in its place amongst the art form?
It does. I see stylistic like choices and similarities.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I see enough of the inclusions and the references. Like you cited, like there's like a bunch of like Attack on Titan references in the new Puss in Boots movie, which I'm totally gonna plug.
Wait. Let me just clarify real quick. I haven't seen the movie. Mm-hmm. This is all. The
references are there. I've seen the movie. They're okay. It's there. For sure.
What I was talking about were some things I saw online, memes and other clips.
I've seen the memes too,
and
they're good.
I am very well acquainted with Attack on Titan, so to me it looked like a lot of these scenes were inspired by Attack on Titan.
Yes,
that's all I'm saying.
I would say it's inspired and similar enough that I would say it counts as like a reference. It's sort of having some conjunction to it. Thematically, the references fall short. Again, Puss in Boots is not a movie that's trying to be literary. I think it actually does reach some aspects of that. Not necessarily the conversation with other things as heavily. If I looked into it, I might find more there to...
Well, there's a lot of conversation between Brothers Grimm fairy tales and Puss in Boots.
Yes.
As well as Shrek, which is also inspired by the same background of fairy tales.
But sharing a universe and being in conversation with a different literary work is potentially, but not necessarily the same thing. Mm-hmm. I'd agree with you overall there. Again, like, I'm not here saying that Avatar can't be an anime. I'm just saying, from what I know, what I've seen, and all that I've gathered, I just feel like it doesn't fit in or conversate, or it wasn't created with enough intent to sort of fit into that form. Stylistically, it does. But in that form aspect, if anime was a limerick, I don't think Avatar is a limerick, quite. And maybe someone who like writes manga or is like an expert on anime is like, this is what anime is, and lines that like lays it out for me is like, this is what it is. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'll listen to that, and if we between us or with someone else here or someone else can kind of find a definitive definition, maybe I'll hear that definition and be like, oh, well then yeah, Avatar's an anime. But from my perspective, I feel like Avatar is just not quite there.
So what are the tropes that you mentioned? You don't have to know all of them. Just give me what your opinion. Like, what's a few tropes?
I can't think of very many anime tropes that Avatar doesn't have. But how many anime are specifically like children's shows? Because Avatar is that, and I feel like a lot of anime is at least teen to adult relevant.
Sure.
Right?
I think one trope it doesn't have is a sort of non-gender conforming ambiguity to a lot of characters. That's something I was thinking about, is that a lot of times you come across these most of the time it's very feminine looking, sounding, and acting men in anime.
I can see that, yeah.
And it's not necessarily related to the character's sexual preference. It's just a style.
It's just the style of, like, I mean, JoJo is very ambiguous.
Right.
In a lot of ways. And that's just, that's the style. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, can you consider Avatar a shonen?
Shonen is a studio that's sort of developed into a style of tropes
The studio was named after the style.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, shonens are like
Huh.
action over drama.
I don't. There's so much drama in it. I feel like the drama and the action are so well balanced. I would say the drama even kind of rules over action. The action is there and consistent and present and powerful, but the action always serves the drama, never the other way.
So a good example of shonens are like Dragon Ball Z,
Dragon Ball,
One Piece,
The drama serves the action.
Naruto.
Yeah.
And it's all like power high. Like there are certain power sets, whether it be the devil fruits in One Piece, the different kinds of jutsus in Naruto, Dragon Balls,
The level of Super Saiyan.
Super Saiyans, and there's one other one. Bleach. Bleach has the
I know nothing about Bleach.
soul eaters,
Something.
soul killers. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't watch Bleach.
Here's something we can think. I'm glad you're bringing these up because these are things I couldn't think of. But I think they do reinforce my perspective in some ways. There's no power level system in Avatar. None whatsoever.
Right.
All the people who know anything, you look at Iroh, right? Best character in Avatar. Also, if you don't think that, you're wrong. Thank you.
I agree. I agree. Don't look at me like
Okay.
I mean, he's easily one of the best.
I thought you were put off by that, which I just find that was a joke. But he is my favorite character. I think he's the most. He knows probably pound for pound the most about bending out of any character in the original series, and his entire thing is it's all about how you use your bending and how much difference and growth you incorporate into it. It's not about like, well, when you train hard enough, you reach this level, then you'll be stronger than this other person. It's not even about being stronger. It's about being a more developed person. At the end of the series, spoiler alert, Zuko wins the battle against Azula, really, truly, and loses the fight. Katara does not win against Azula because she is stronger than Azula. She wins out of, I guess, like cunning, or she understands her situation. She understands her opponent better. She uses the situation and the environment to her advantage and turns the tide of battle that way. Aang lets go of his attachment to the things that he wants and his desires, and that's what allows him to access the Avatar state and save the world. Whatever you want. His apex moment is a character development moment, and it's not even to a like an apogee of strength, because he does overcome Ozai's strength, but Aang's real victory is when Ozai's spirit starts to overwhelm him in the Avatar state and transform him into something monstrous. He overcomes that, and instead of killing Ozai or whatever else he was going to do,
Well, he was about to kill him with a redirected lightning bolt.
Yeah.
If you remember.
I'm talking about later, though, when he's tapping into Ozai's
Well, that's the first opportunity he had to just murk the guy, was with that lightning bolt.
Yeah, it was. He overcomes it then, but he also overcomes it later when Ozai's like pride and spirit. There's this like there's this red to blue shift, and the red almost overcomes Aang. Ozai's like pride and desires and corruption, whatever you want, his spirit almost overcomes Aang, actually, in the Avatar state, which Ozai is a crazy underdeveloped character. Probably the biggest whiff, I would say, probably in the series, is that Ozai's character is just not very deep. But that is an interesting thought. That Aang in the Avatar state was like almost at least unbalanced in that moment. But he overcomes that, and he decides to do the Avatar thing, for lack of a better term, and remove Ozai's bending passively and saves the world without bloodshed.
Do you notice something about what you just mentioned? The color shift? That whole scene?
Yeah.
If you watch Legend of Korra, if you watch Legend of Korra, when they go into the second season, they go into the background history of how the Avatar came to be, and those two spirits.
Oh, yeah. Rava and the other one.
Rava and, yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. So,
absolutely.
But Rava is blue, which is Aang's color.
And the other one is red.
And then the other one's red.
That's a really cool connection that I had not thought about before.
That's probably intentional.
I'm sure that if it wasn't intentional, they at least incorporated what they already worked with into their mythos as they continue to build.
Well, sure.
Considering how well thought out, I mean, we saw so many things in the pilot that came in later. I'm sure they had it planned in some sort of way, even if it was just in the back. Like, they had this idea of like two spirits kind of governing the I don't know, the world, but
the spirit world.
Sure, yeah. But all the development in Avatar is distinctly character and even kind of morally based, which I think is something that you don't see in, not necessarily no anime, but not in a lot of shonen, certainly. So I don't think we could call Avatar a shonen for those reasons. I mean, maybe there's other stuff we can bring up that has more similarities, but...
The other word is escaping me right now. Something with a J, I believe. But it describes the opposite of shonen, more like drama-based, more like Death Note, or I guess Cowboy Bebop.
Not super familiar with that, but from what I've seen, I kind of see that.
It's one of the all-time greats.
Yeah,
but
I've gathered that much.
There's no superhuman abilities. There's nothing. It's just
just a bunch of characters doing their thing in the world,
just in space doing their thing.
I really would like to give a good look to that one.
Do it. I recommend it.
Seems like from that older but really rich era.
Also, something to look into is called Lupin the Third. It's a series of animes. Like there's a show that had multiple seasons. Then there's a series of anime movies that go along with it. But it's all about this character who is a master thief. But he happens to be the grandson of a fictional French... how should I put it? There's a novel called Lupin, and it's about a master thief. It was written in France. It's a French character. The Japanese appropriated that story and created an anime where their main character, Lupin the Third, is the grandson
of that character.
Huh. So that's what it's about, without any more spoilers. And they continue to make those movies. It goes back to like 60s and 70s.
Cool. That's very interesting. I will try to keep that in mind. That's a really neat idea.
You might like it, storytelling wise.
I might. It sounds like something interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. What else can we say about Avatar? I love, there's so much, I think, about Avatar we could talk about more in depth story-wise or animation-wise. We really talked a lot about whether or not it's an anime, and I think that's a deserved conversation. But it's not one that I want to consume, like, our love of anime and our love of Avatar, whatever it is. Whatever we think it is, we consider it to be. Like, I think we can all agree that it's a wonderful show, and while it was made as a kids show, I'm continually surprised by how many like articles of media, books and shows and movies alike that are sort of made for kids or sort of intended to be at first for kids that really are so much. I mean, like you got like the Chronicles of Narnia over there, like a kid's book series, like worthy of being like a kid's first reading at that level. You know, it's like it's simple enough you could learn to read with it. Sure. And yet, how profound and deep and interesting is it for adult, like readers or viewers for, you know, an Avatar Adventure Time's sake? Like, this
is all a testament to the authors.
I'm floored by how much, like, I guess things stay relevant, or maybe what we don't appreciate as kids is just so rich as adults, or what. I think that all kids shows should have something that they'll be able to take into the rest of their lives. I think Avatar does that.
I would agree. Now, only because we're kind of limited on time, I would love to go into the, like, I don't know, nitty-gritty details of, like, storytelling behind the entire series. But I want to get your opinion on the news about these new upcoming spin-offs and sequels.
Of course.
So this was recently released that in either 24 or 2025, we are getting, it says 25, we're getting a Earth Avatar series. So the next Avatar after Korra, who was a waterbender, is an Earthbender.
That looks like Bolin and Kuvira had a kid.
Maybe it is.
I doubt it.
You never know.
I guess.
You excited about
Bolin
that?
Bolin deserves better, though. Let's be honest. Kuvira had a nice redemption, but I don't know. My boy Bolin deserves the best of the best. He was done wrong so many times in that show. Anyway,
maybe we need a 5th season of Korra.
I think
just kidding. I'm done with Korra.
I think he could be a really cool, like, lava bending teacher, like in the next series. You know, like he could be that, like, Katara, the one that carries over. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I would both miss my boy Mako. They're great. Anyway.
And then we have the adult Aang movie. Oh, it's a movie.
It's a movie?
Oh, I thought it was a series. So it's a sequel to Avatar. the initial series.
I think that's probably wise. That it's not too drawn out.
That's fair. I wonder who's
Not
going
that
to
I
produce
would
it.
be upset with it being drawn out. I just would rather it be good than get my hopes up.
Right, quality over quantity.
Yeah.
So that's coming out in October of the same year, 2025.
Hmm.
Then we have a Zuko movie coming out.
Probably most excited for that.
And that
Probably
is
most people are.
going to hit theaters in October of 2026. I'm hoping to see some, was it Blue Devil, Blue Spirit? What is his
Blue
alter
Spirit.
ego? Blue Spirit.
Blue Spirit.
Less firebending and more stealth.
I'd like to see
Sword
equal
play.
shares of both.
Well, I mean, you only get to see that in like one episode.
True, but I'm very partial to the firebending at the same time.
But I understand that, but did he have that persona already like in his back pocket before the events
I
of that
think
episode?
so.
So what had he been doing as the Blue Spirit?
Probably finding himself. I don't know. Listen, the guy had to reclaim his honor. He had a lot of himself to find.
It's
He
hard
went
to
on a
find
whole
yourself
arc
with a
trying to-
mask on.
Franz Kafka said, was it Franz Kafka or was it a Joker quote? I can't remember. Sounded like Franz Kafka. Maybe I'm mixing that up with another one. I saw a quote the other day. I think it's probably from the Joker movie that I have not seen yet. Yes, I know. I need to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Give a man a mask and he will show his true face.
Mm.
So yeah, I think Zuko is finding himself.
Okay.
But who knows? I'm
That's fair
excited
enough.
for it either way. What else?
2026 and 2027, we have 2 spin-off series. This article says either of these shows can follow newly formed original stories, but fans have been desiring an adaptation of The Shadow of Kyoshi and The Rise of Kyoshi. I believe this is The Rise of Kyoshi that we have right over here. No, I'm sorry, that's The Shadow of Kyoshi. Yeah, Shadow of Kyoshi. Okay, so they want adaptations of the novel series with Kyoshi.
Deserved.
So that's just like a fan request. That's neither confirmed nor denied.
Interesting.
And yeah, that's pretty much all the news we have. We also know that Netflix is making a adaptation of the show.
Sorry, yeah, the original.
Luckily for the fans of the show, the Netflix adaptation, unlike other anime Netflix adaptations, it's going to be produced by the original creators, or at least they're going to have a very strong input. So hopefully,
I thought they like pulled out of that. Did everybody? I think that they were meeting some strong resistance, and I think they quit on it. They were like, "We're gonna let it be its own thing." And then I think everybody freaked out, and they might be back on it. But I remember hearing that they had left that. They might have left that to do this.
Well, what if is the Netflix adaptation still happening? Because now you're making me doubt myself.
I think it's still happening. Whether or not it's happening under the close supervision and involvement of the original creators, I am not sure. And for the reason that Netflix was doing it and it was a really rocky process in general, I have not had high expectations for it. As an Avatar thing that I love. Like, the things I love about Avatar and the things that will come out of this live-action adaptation, they may be the same, or they may be similar, and they may be great, or it may deeply disappoint me. And I'm at peace with that.
Fair enough.
So I don't have super high expectations for that. These animated series and movies, though, I'm very excited for. I'll just go in order. I think that the Earth Avatar continuation of Korra, I think is a good choice in a continuation. As much as I would love to see more of Aang and the gang, I think that the idea that we were talking about this before, the idea that Korra is the new cycle of like avatars and Aang is like the end of the old one was a cool concept, one that I didn't necessarily love, but it wasn't fully developed. So I think adding that Earthbender story into it, I think that's a wise choice, and I'd like to see that idea kind of more fully developed.
Right.
The Zuko movie, I love my boy Zuko. I cannot wait to see that. I think it's gonna be so cool. Was that a movie or a show for Zuko?
Zuko's gonna be a movie.
It's gonna be a movie. And the gang, the adult Avatar, the adult like Aang and Sokka and Zuko and Katara is gonna be a movie as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are both gonna be great. I honestly can't see the original creators creating them. I can't see that going awry. I mean, I can, but I don't think it will. I'm very excited for both of those. And while I didn't love all the directions they took Korra, I liked Avatar as a high fantasy sort of world. I didn't love the steampunk thing as an Avatar thing because I really just liked the classic Avatar better. as much as it was cool, I'm glad they're developing it. I'm glad they're carrying it forward, and I'm sure that it's going to be very good. And they're going to bring a lot more of those adult concepts with the high-level animation and really great voice acting, with more sort of like adult focus and audience. And I think that we're all going to really love that, honestly. I can't see these really flopping, which is a dangerous thing to say.
Yeah, that's a dangerous thing to say, is right.
A lot of pain, but it's fine.
I'm optimistic about the animated stuff.
I think we have good reason to be hopeful.
I want to see Aang and the gang as adults. I think
Dude,
that would really bridge the gap between Korra and the original series.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of flashbacks in Korra.
Yeah.
And you kind of want to see, because it's like 40 or 50 years later.
Yeah.
So you kind of want to see that big gap of time. Because Avatar, The Last Airbender, happens within like 3-year period.
Mm-hmm.
So you fall in love with these characters for 3 years out of their adolescent years. And then
Barely.
they're just gone. And then you're supposed to like just be like okay with that when they're old and on their way out, and Korra is the next Avatar. So Aang's dead, and the other 3 members of the gang. Oh, Sokka's dead also. So Zuko, Toph, and Katara are the only ones left from the old guard, so to speak, and they're like 80 to 100 years old.
Toph was great.
Toph was great.
We lost nothing with Toph.
Although I think Zuko
We lost a lot, but we're getting a Zuko movie.
No. We didn't lose that much with Zuko, because if you see his skills in season 3 of Korra,
How well I remember that.
they go like, what's his face? The Airbender guy gets his flying powers. Zafar, right?
Oh, the villain guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
yeah.
he is trying to break his friends out of prison.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like a different solitary confinement prison for each one of them. And the one in, I want to say, the North Pole, the Firebender, was that?
Plea, I think, the Firebender.
The one, the pyrokinetic one?
Yes.
Okay. Long story short, Zuko is there to defend against the infiltration.
Mm.
Now, obviously it fails because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
But his skills in that scene, my God,
But,
he
like-
lost 0 muscle mass or like... He lost 0 skills.
He lost a lot of his like motivation and desire to like be a relevant character in the story, though.
He wasn't
Just
even introduced until that season.
Yeah, but like he like Korra talks to him, and he's like, yeah, you go along and like do your hero stuff, and I'm gonna like hang out with my dragon.
He's old.
Like, yeah, but like I don't know, that wasn't Iroh, and I didn't want it to be Zuko. And if it is Zuko, it's like a Luke Skywalker in Episode 8 thing. Like, you at least want to see why he lost all desire to, like...
Except
do stuff.
Iroh was still doing his Force Ghost mentoring. Just like in Star Wars, Iroh was in the spirit realm talking to Korra.
Iroh in the spirit realm was the biggest travesty Korra ever had as a series.
Why do you think so?
I hated Iroh in the...
He transcended death. He just moved to the spirit realm.
I didn't hate that he was there. I just hated every line that came out of his mouth.
Oh, that's a different story. But we won't dive into that. Let's not do it. Don't do it.
I had one sentence.
Okay. What is it?
All the deep wisdom and wonderful, like, big-heartedness about Iroh is completely dry in Korra. He dispenses these, like, little half-penny truths to Korra as a child. And it's not like, oh, well, she's a child, so that's what she needs. They're just very shallow.
Sure.
He's just a shallow character in the spirit realm. And I get, like, who did they find and how much time did they have to spend on his character, whatever, but it just wasn't him, man. It was like Jack Sparrow in the 5th Pirates movie. It just wasn't him. You know?
I agree.
But anyway,
All right.
it's a different thing.
Well,
You gonna play your song now?
I think I'm going to play this as an outro.
Do it.
But I think
We're gonna sing it?
we're not
No?
going to sing it. Do you know the words?
Bro, it's like 5 words.
No, there's more than that. All right, here we go.
I mean, I sort of. We don't have to get it perfectly.
And it's as old as Earthbending itself. Two lovers forbidden from one another. A war divides their people, and a mountain divides them apart.
I don't. It's kind of hard.
Built a path to be together. Yeah, I forgot the next couple lines, but there it goes.
Secret tunnel! secret tunnel through the mountains. Secret, 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 secret tunnel.
I think we'll just stick with flying.
I think it's so funny because, like I mentioned to you before, I saw the voice actors at Comic-Con for Zuko, Momo and Appa, and Korra. They were all on a panel. They were reading lines. But at the end of the panel, they ended with that. The whole crowd was singing that song together. Awesome. It was so funny.
I bet they had the phones like going like this. Like,
something like that, probably.
Like that. That's great.
But
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been a fun episode. I really enjoyed the conversation we had, and hopefully maybe we could have a follow-up eventually when the new series come out. When
I gotta find the time to see them, but
you have a couple of years.
Sorta. They're not available to me for a couple of years. But I think that would be fun. I'd definitely be open to talk about them. And
sure.
I'm sure they'll be noteworthy, but we'll see.
And even if they aren't, I have another show I want to do an episode on. I'm not going to say it just yet, but it is terrible. And the reason I want to do an episode on it is because it's based on a lot of really good source material and previous incarnations of the same show, same characters. And this one is god-awful.
I struggle to talk about terrible things with a smile on my face, but
it's really bad.
It could happen.
But we'll see.
We'll see.
All right,
well.
So this has been another great episode of Eldest Born, a Three Brothers podcast, and we're signing off.
Thanks so much.